Hello, Cosmic Soul family. Ella Ivy here with Livzenastrology. And I was called to pop on here and talk about the upcoming approaching full moon in Scorpio. This is happening on May 1st. And based on the system that I use, it's going to be on 1, 2, 3, and 3 seconds Eastern Standard Time. I'm here in the Northern Hemisphere of the United States. And so if you're here and you're vibrational match to this transmission, thank you so much for being here, for taking your time, your most valuable resource to tune in with this approaching energy because it's a potent full moon. Anybody that's familiar with Scorpionic energy realizes, if you understand the archetype, that Scorpio is the transformer. It brings things to light. It brings things to illumination. It shows what's been hidden in the shadows in the underworld. It's ruled by Pluto. Pluto is the god of the underworld. And so it really is, anytime the moon ingresses into Scorpio, it can be a very intense time anyway, because things are being forced to be illuminated, to be brought up, to be seen. Some of it's taboo, some of it's unpleasant. A lot of it has to do with 8th house matters. So you can see here I have an astrology wheel with Aries on the ascendant. So Scorpio rules the 8th house, which traditionally rules sex, death, taxes, things that are taboo. It's our urge to merge with the other, right? And it also has to do with sexuality. So things that have been hidden in the realms regarding these matters are being brought to light. And we can see right now on the stage, the world stage, that's happening with our governing systems, with what's going on with the Einstein files, we'll just call it that. There's a lot that's being brought up from the unconscious realms, because Scorpio also has to do with, again, the underworld. And so the underworld of humanity, right? It's not all love and light and roses, unfortunately, or fortunately, it just is, it's polarity. We each have an agreeable or a disagreeable aspect. I'm trying to refrain from using language that's so polarizing, because with Uranus just going into Gemini, it's all about, extremes with Uranus and Gemini. So I'm trying to mediate, come to that middle path, right? Which is the heart. So this transmission about the energy is coming from a heart-mind connection. I don't want to bypass the shadow. I don't think we're allowed to bypass the shadow at this point. We're supposed to be able to look at it and to see it, but in a very neutral way, right? To neutralize, the poison, right? Think of like the scorpion tail. And if you are tuned into this channel, we just had a revelation reflection download when Uranus ingressed into Gemini on the 25th of April about Scorpionic energy and Asclepius and the 13th Zodiac and its opposition, the 14th constellation, which is in Orion, right? So there's some deep gnosis there that has to do with alchemy, personal alchemy. Asclepius, who was the character that Ophiuchus constellation was named after, he was actually a master healer. He was taught by the centaur Chiron, who was a master healer and teacher to the gods. He taught Hercules, he taught all the Grecian gods, the mortals, the immortals, the power of healing, of being able to heal oneself through herbs, through alchemy, through specific frequencies. And so the Scorpionic energy right now is what I'm seeing. Okay, so for those that speak astrology, and if you want to learn more astrology, please check out my bio. I've got free offerings there. I've got an app that I created if you can, learn these symbols yourselves. But through this, my own gnosis and sitting with the energies, what I'm seeing here. So first of all, if you're looking at the wheel with me, and again, thank you so much for being here. We're looking at the full moon in Scorpio transmission. The moon will always be opposite the sun, right here. Here's the sun, the symbol for the sun in Taurus, on a full moon. And when it's a new moon, the sun and the moon are going to be together or conjoined or conjunct, right? So we can see that the moon is going to be opposite the sun at 11 degrees, because numerology matters. The 11, if you study numerology, is a master number, so you really don't break it down. And I think of 2 pillars, right? I think of like a doorway opening, right? The 11. And in 11 degrees, 20 minutes, right? So 2 is polarity. 2 has to do with duality. It rules Gemini, which also, again, Uranus just ingressed into Gemini. So we're having new thoughts about these things. About what? Our moon is our memory. And it's helping us to remember that we do have the ability to heal ourselves through deep alchemy. The sun is shining a light, Taurus, which also in some mythologies has to rule the earth, right? Our own physical body. That we do have our own personal power and ability to heal our bodies. And again, this is just a story. This is the story of astrology. What I found interesting, though, is this right here in the fifth house is the symbol for Asclepius, which we talked about, is also the Ophiuchus energy, right, which is the serpent bearer. And the constellation, he's holding a serpent, which we know in historical nomenclature, serpents have kind of a bad rap, but it's actually a very mystical archetype, because it does have to do with our own current system, which is in our spine, our Kundalini energy, because we are bioelectrical beings, right? So our nervous system is our electrical current that connects us to everything that is, right? To this unified field of awareness. So being able to master our energy current, which runs up and down our spine, right? In some cultures, they call that the Ingala and Pingala, the masculine, the feminine, which again is just electric magnetic. Electric is the masculine, the magnetic is the feminine. And we all have this, no matter what your gender is or what you identify with, we all have these configurations within our nervous system, within our spinal column, which is like the snake energy, the serpentine energy. And Asclepius, in his mythology, he was able to master, and how he was able to actually bring back somebody from the dead. He had this Lazarus ability in the story, because he observed, he actually, in the story, Asclepius came across a snake and he killed it. And then all of a sudden, another snake came out of the blue to the snake he just killed, applied some herbs on that snake, and the snake came back to life. So instead of being scared of the second snake, Asclepius got curious and said, wait a minute, I just took action. I just killed the snake, and now I'm watching the other snake come and give it some herbs and bring it back to life. Well, again, we look at the mythos and how it relates to our own self-healing, because again, Taurus has to do with the earth, which rules plants, medicines, plant medicines, things of that nature, whether you're working with essential oils or plant medicines, whatever the case may be, that there's a deep mystery there. Because the second snake that Asclepius saw, which is right here, and again, it's squaring this energy, right? So it's squaring Scorpio and it's squaring the sun. So square means there has to be some change that happens within our periphery. And because it's in the sign of Leo, this square, this Asclepius energy right now, where it's transiting in the sky, it has to do with the heart. And if you invert the language, right, of the word heart and earth, it's spelled the same. It's just you have to put the letters in inverted, right? I forgot what that's called in English, but there's a term for it where you take the letters and you scramble them up and you make other words with it, right? So the earth is the heart, and the deep gnosis, the deep square, the change that has to happen in the fifth house, which also is ruled by Leo, right, which is opposite Pluto, opposite Aquarius, is our remembrance that we have our ability to heal within our hearts and our inner knowing. The heart space is the earth space. We are in this middle path of consciousness. And again, this is just a story for anybody that's connected to it and that wants to go deep diving more into the scorpionic energy, because Scorpio is very hidden. And like the snake, if you watch a snake, it slithers, it moves, it uses its whole body to tap into the energy, to sense its environment around it. And then, of course, it sticks out its tongue, right, which is speaking in its own way, right? I'm just looking at the archetypes here. So this scorpionic energy that's in the serpentine energy, which is in our healing abilities, because also if you study astrology, you understand that Scorpio is associated with the master healer, with the master alchemist, the one that's able to turn lead into stone by doing certain configurations, using fire, using the elements, using earth, water, air. Think of it like in its most basic form, like you're going to the kitchen and you're making a dinner, right? Sometimes you've got to muddle up the herbs, you've got to cook, you've got to express stuff, you've got to do certain actions with what you have in the kitchen to make a meal, right? So there are certain things you have to work with within the earth plane, certain ways to use alchemy to invite in your own self-healing abilities. Now, what I find interesting with this whole Asclepius energy and people now talking about the 13th zodiac and now I'd say the 14th zodiac, because there always has to be polarity. Nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything in this particular dimension has to live in duality, right? The poles, we have a North Pole and a South Pole. We have light and dark. We have masculine and feminine. Everything is directed to twos. So even in the zodiacal wheelhouse, we can't just look at one sign independently. We always have to look at its opposition to find the full periphery, the full viewpoint of what's really happening. So while the sun in this full moon in Scorpio illumination is going to be in Taurus, which is highlighting the earth, right? Highlighting perhaps certain plant medicines, which is no accident that the government and here in the United States just signed a bill into effect that's going to start exploring more psychedelics, right? Working with more earth medicine to work with what the mind, right? This is Gemini and Aquarius, which is right here. And again, it's right next to Venus within 9 degrees. And Venus is our value. So we're starting to really understand the value and the importance of mental health, mental well-being, the importance of a healed and whole mind, one that's not fragmented by fear or, more importantly, things that have been hidden, because that's what we're seeing now that fragments humanity more than anything else is when I've been told secrets, when things have been hidden in the underground, that actually, because we're such empathic and intuitive beings that we feel something's going on, but then we're being told by the media and other, places we get information that there's something else going on. So we feel this dissonance, right? So we know that there's been energies at play that have been hidden in the underground. Again, these Einstein files have been showing us a lot of what's been happening within the sexual realms, within government, because again, the real sex, death, and taxes, where how money is generated, how big money is being played out in this world right now. Again, this is just a story for anybody that's listening, any powers that be. This is just an astrological musing and storytelling time, a mythos, if you will, that's just connecting us to our own personal psychology. And psychology is really where the focus is going to be, especially for the next 7 years, because Uranus is going to be in Gemini, and it has to do with the mind. It has to do with how our mind works, how our mind is programmed, how we are influenced by vibrations, how we get into certain states, brainwave states or patterns. You can look this up, theta state, beta state, alpha state, gamma, and how certain realities are created when you're in these states. So the more coherent or the more calm the state of the brain is, the more, the better basically you're perceiving reality, the more harmonious your nervous system. You feel you're more in tune, you feel more synchronistic with what's going on in the world, right? Because again, they call it coherence. You're in a state of coherence. And if you can have not only your brain in a state of coherence, but your heart in a state of coherence, and they talk about that heart-mind institute, right? That heart-mind connection. Then when you connect those points, when you arc the energy, arced angles, then you're projecting out that third body energy, right? If you watch Netflix, it's called Third Body Problem. From what I'm seeing, it's because there's a disconnect between the heart and the mind, or there has been. And so there's been a collaboration, again, things that are hidden in the underworld, and Scorpio also has to do with power, because it's ruled by Pluto, and Pluto rules power, right? Power is not good or bad, it's just an energy source. Think of nuclear energy. Nuclear energy can power a whole town and light a whole town and give it energy, or it can be like Hiroshima, right? And it can cause devastation and destruction. So it's how the power is wielded is really where the consciousness is being shown that we do have the power through our consciousness to create our reality. Now, I was just watching an old, when I got introduced, and, shout out to David Wilcox, who was here on the planet as definitely a way shower and an activator for the planet. Whatever you think about David Wilcox, it doesn't matter. It's just the energy and what he invoked in through his messaging. And how I got ignited by him was back in 2012 when he was talking about convergence. He was talking about the pineal gland. He was talking about Project Looking Glass, all these things. These are the first musings I've heard about these things was from David Wilcock. So he's been in this field quite a bit. And it's no surprise that, again, how his death is a mystery, right? Death has to do with Scorpio, or his unalived, I should say. His unaliving was a mystery, which is also very Scorpionic. And so there might be this revelation, this opening up of how our consciousness has been influenced by media, by frequencies, by sound, by vibration. We just didn't understand how our minds worked. But those in power, secret power, hidden against Scorpionic energy and ruled by Pluto, which is also squared this energy here because it's at 5 degrees, and Pluto right now it's going to be here till 2044, I think, for next 40 years, something like that. Anyway, we have a long period to work with this energy, but it also has to do with the underworld of Aquarius, because it's revealing too. Aquarius has to do with communities, society, groups, organizations. And so who's been really running these organizations? Who's really been in charge, been in power? You know, we elected supposedly these governing officials, which also has to do with Capricorn. And, we know Pluto was in Capricorn for the last 14 years. So now it's transiting, and we're getting ready to see that the power dynamics of what? Our consciousness, of humanity, of society, of how groups are formed, of how communities are formed, of how government was formed. And it may have been based on hidden power structures that we were not privy to. I'd say because we weren't mature enough. You don't put an infant behind the wheel of a car. There's stages to evolution. There's stages to awakening. There's stages to maturation, and there's rites of passage that I feel is just part of the natural process when you tune into nature and you watch how nature works. Nature has its own divine intelligence, and there's a divine intelligence. That same divine intelligence is also happening within us. And so now we're starting to really, with Uranus, because Uranus is like lightning bolts, flashes of insight. It's like all of a sudden you just can be walking through a grocery store, and I know many of you can probably relate. All of a sudden you just have this flash of insight. You're like, whoa, I've never seen that or thought of that before in that way. Whoa, that just shifted my whole reality, right? This is actually why I love sci-fi movies and certain media things. I love to be like, I call it the aha or the wow moment. Like, wow, I've never seen that before. I've never imaged that before. I never perceived that before, right? This is when I was getting into psychedelics years ago, back in 2018, when Uranus first ingressed into Taurus. That's when I had my first DMT journey, because I felt like I had to push through this membrane of consciousness. No matter what I was doing at the time, I was deeply meditating. I was working out. I was I was doing all the things, right, in the physical. But I always felt like there was this biofilm in my consciousness that I just couldn't penetrate, getting into that oneness field that, that everybody had talked about, that unity consciousness, and you get into oneness and you get into this state where we're all one. Well, I couldn't see it. No matter what I was doing in the physical to get to that state, I couldn't do it. So I was actually in a power walking meditation one day, and I, believe it or not, I was listening to Joe Rogan back when he was cool. And he was talking about his DMT journeys, right? And he was talking about these little men that he met. And anyway, he'd gone on several, we call them the diamond journeys. And so I was fascinated. I said, man, this guy's talking about something. That's what I think I need to experience. I need to experience something that can break through that membrane, that disconnect that I feel. Because no matter what I'm doing in the physical, I felt like I needed that at the time. Now, knowing what I know now, you don't need that, because you can access DMT through breath work, through holotropic breath work, and through certain meditation practices. But I just wasn't, honestly, I wasn't patient enough to get to that. So I wanted it now. I wanted to experience change. And for me at that point, I felt like it was life or death, because I was really feeling depressive thoughts, and my son had just graduated high school. So I was going through that change of life, and I was going through so many changes, right? Career changes. I knew I couldn't be a bartender anymore. I just wasn't a vibrational match to the bar scene. I was clearing out, I was changing my diet. I was going more into the vegetarian. I hate to call that labels, but I just quit eating meat. So I was changing. My body was changing chemically, but I just felt like there was something stuck in my mind. And so I decided for my own personal journey to have this experience. Now, again, I'm not recommending this to anybody. Everybody has to do their own deep dive with what you feel is best for you at the time, because we are sovereign, especially with our consciousness. We do have the right to dictate our consciousness and what we are exposed to. And so now is taking that power back and just having the ability to explore different plant medicines and using certain states to get into certain states of consciousness that's helping with PTSD, that's helping with very traumatic experiences. And we know, especially with, the Einstein files, there's a lot of trauma that people have gone through, and it's been systemic, and it's been through people in power that have really damaged, and our soul took a hit, right? Our spirit, the spirit of humanity has taken a deep wound by those we entrusted in power, right? And a lot of it has to do with sexuality, which is also Kundalini energy. If you guys are focusing and moving into that, working with the Serpent energy and working more with Asclepius or Ophiuchus, which, by the way, if you're into the symbolism, I just found the symbol here. So it looks like almost like, when you see the health staff, whenever you see an ambulance and you see that image with the snake going up the staff. Actually, I think that's an incomplete snake because we need two snakes. We have Kundalini up and down, right? Jacob's ladder goes up and down. So that's been part of also too our imbalance in this reality, is we've been only given half of the information or a quarter of the information on how to regenerate and how to really complete the circuitry within through our bioelectrical magnetic frequencies, right? So if we've only been given half of the recipe or half of the alchemic tools, you can see where that's been a problem for humanity, especially when it comes to self-sourcing and our ability to self-regulate, because that's what the body does naturally. If we just get out of the way, truly in the state of oneness, our bodies are naturally in homeostasis. It's when we are bombarded by certain frequencies, we imbibe with certain substances, eat certain foods, it dysregulates all of our systems. And we're really starting to remember this because we still have the North Node, the nodes of the moon right now in Pisces and Virgo, the axis point. So South Node is Virgo. We're remembering that we do have these technologies within our own bodies. And if you want to check out some of David Wilcock's later work, or earlier work, time traveling, back in when he was really discussing between the 2010 and 2012 period, that's when really he gets into the juice of possibly why he was unalive to this day, because I feel like people are still coming online with the information he was giving us back then. Again, who he became, if he was commandeered, if he was taken underground, whatever the story may be, we may never know. But if you do get into certain states of consciousness, and this is where I would say a lot of the governing bodies who know how our consciousness works, that's why they were investing in certain programs, certain MLK or MK Ultra, stuff that they've been working on, and has to do with looking glass and forward projection, being able to see the future. And what David Wilcock says is our future is based on our consciousness of what we're projecting. So if you change your consciousness, then the reality that you are a vibrational match timeline to, that's what will be. And so there's been a battle right now. We are in this war, the spiritual war for our consciousness, for that, because we are such powerful creators. And again, we've been dumbed down and minimalized. And now I guess there's a whole thing on the internet about cholesterol and we've been, the doctors have been prescribing, lower your cholesterol because it's bad for you. And now it turns out that that's what our brain is mostly 100% made of is cholesterol. So you see, there's been this agenda, right, wrong, good, or bad, to control our consciousness. And so that's what we're breaking out of. That's what we're, especially since, and whatever you feel about politics, it doesn't matter. It's just the energy read that's happening as there's been an opening up, a possibility of opening up our consciousness. Now, what we're opening up to, again, that's going to be based on your vibration. So mental health, mental wellness is really going to be the focus moving forward. And it's going to be based on what you ingest, what you put in your body, what you allow into your consciousness. And that's also through movie watching. That's through watching media, watching me, watching whoever you're drawn to, right? Because you're allowing yourself to be influenced. And so if you're here in a vibrational match to this transmission, thank you. Thank you for opening up and trusting, because I do intend to come from full transparency. I'm on this journey too. I'm not going to profess to know everything by any means, but I am being called to share more of what I've come across, because I've been in this process for a while. And it was forced. My evolution and my awakening, and I'm not awakened. I'm continuing to awaken, and we are all going to continue to awaken. This is not just you have an aha moment. That's it. You think you learn. I've done that too. Or I've had these awakening moments, especially after DMT, and I'm like, man, I know the secrets of the cosmos, right? But no, it actually has taken me 7 years to integrate all the different energies that I experienced in this oneness field. And honestly, to get into these certain spaces, anybody that tries to use language to express what they encountered, they're not telling the truth, because I hate to say it, words cannot embody what true oneness and unity is. There are no words for it. It's experiential. It's ineffable, truly. And so true truth is never spoken. It's experienced and felt. And how you get to those experiential spaces within you, it's up to you. It's your journey. It's your ride. It's your avatar. For me, I wanted to take the rocket ship, right? I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to get into I didn't know about holotropic breath work then, but I did want to, and I was easily influenced and still sometimes am. And like I said, Joe Rogan was cool at the time. So I was like, you know what? It's good for Joe Rogan. I'm going to try this. So I'm not advocating this by any means. I'm just sharing my story on how I got to sort of break this biofilm, this membrane that I felt disconnected to everything and anyone. I felt so alone. I felt so separate. And that was part of my wounding. That was part of my depression. It's because I felt like I was connected, but my mind couldn't grab hold of it. My mind was disconnected from that oneness, even though my heart was connected. So I felt fragmented. I felt fractaled out in a way at that time. And it was very depressing. And so I said, if I'm going to be on this plane, I had made a decision years before, when I had gone through postpartum depression with my son, because that's something that's been, I've got my moon in Scorpio natally in the 12th house. So it's been a journey for me to know my own energy and to know if what I'm feeling is mine or somebody else's. And then, feeling such a heart for humanity, because I'm also a 9 in numerology. So I'm a humanitarian person, right? So I felt everybody's angst and everybody's pain, and I was taking it on as mine. And I was like, this is not mine to take on. I was really kind of maturing at that point, because sometimes suffering forces a certain level of maturity, which I think everybody here can kind of relate to, that sometimes unless we're forced to change or forced to have a new periphery of things, then we're just going to keep going on the same old path, right? If we're not made uncomfortable, then our inner children are going to be wanting to be comfortable, but that's not what this reality is. We are going through an evolutionary process, a maturation process. And so sometimes that takes us to uncomfortable spaces within ourselves, within our psyches. And so it's really about moving through those spaces, not fearing them, although we do tend to fear because we fear the unknown. But we can also program our mind to just know that it's just an experience. Again, for those that have looked at any of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, when he talks about the power of the mind and the placebo effect, right? And really, it is about commanding our consciousness and learning that skill set, learning like an adult how to master the mind and the emotions, right? The mind and the heart, and get them to collaborate, get them to be in unity. And, I also, if you ever follow this language, and if you guys are still here, thank you so much for being here for this transmission. I really feel like you're adding to it. You're bringing your energy and your presence and your most valuable resource, which is your time. So I just want to thank you for spending your time here to connect, because I feel like I've set the intention that those are a vibrational match, that you're almost like a ley line, that you're an energy point that we're supposed to connect to, each of us, to activate these remembrances, these codes, especially if you've been dealing with any kind of health issues, whether it's spiritual health, mental health, emotional health, physical health, financial health, whatever has to do with health. It's that Virgo axis. This is the time for us to ignite one another and to help us remember that we do have these innate powers within us. And those of us who have gone a little bit forward and experimented, and now it's like, I think of Joseph Campbell, right? It's like the hero's return to come back to tell the story of what we experienced so we can help one another. Because if one of us makes it, all of us make it. And so that's like that bodhisattva energy, right? It's the energy that comes back and says, yeah, I've already ascended and made it to samadhi, right? To the heavenly places on earth, or in consciousness, but it's no fun if you still see people suffering because they just don't know, because they're ignorant to their own energy centers. They're ignorant to their own power. And so this is an invitation to invite in a remembrance, to invite in our own inner gnosis, that we do remember how to do these things. We do have this innate ability within us. So it's time to share our stories. It's time to share our points of view. And again, I always say, go through a filtration system, take whatever resonates and leave the rest, because it's not about being right or wrong at this point. It's about what's going to bring you freedom in your mind, in your body, in your heart, in your thoughts. What thoughts are going to bring you the most freedom? It's not about being right. I'd rather be wrong and happy, right? Because to be right is also an ego thing, which again, we need the ego because that's also part of what helps us navigate this particular dimension. But it's just a tool, right? I think of it like a map. The map is just going to get you there, but the map doesn't know everything. It's just the ley line it tells you where you are in consciousness, and the brain is just there to help you have an experience like a computer. And the more we get into this Pluto and Aquarius, the more we're getting into AI technology, all intelligence, right? Ancient intelligence. I even say OI, which is organic intelligence, right? Because nature has always been there and she's always had the organic intelligence. And so if we start merging with natural medicines and herbs, like the Asclepius story told us, how he was able to observe one snake healing the other snake through herbs. There's a mystery there. And even if you break in the etymology is her, Her, BS, right? Her, be. It's the being state. It's the ability to tune into what plant medicine is needed at that time and space for you to regenerate. Because Scorpio also is coming to show us, and this is a conversation that most people are having, especially since 2020 with the whole COVID thing, is our own mortality and how we face our own mortality and how death is not what we've been taught. In some cultures, some kids were raised, and this is the Egyptians. I was listening to Matteo Stefano, and he was talking about, he can remember, because he remembers his past lives, and he can remember his past life of 12,000 years ago. You can check him out. He's on Gaia, and he's got his own stuff right now. But he says that when he came into this incarnation, that he remembers growing up as a kid learning about death, and that death comes upon us all and how to die properly because death is not a stopping of something. It's just a transition. It's that liminal space between dimensions that we transverse into. And it's about how much of our consciousness we take with us in death is going to dictate our next timeline, right? And our next experience. So if we're always in this state of forgetting our own consciousness and going through these periods where it's like we get wiped clean, right? Think of like a program that constantly gets wiped off, and you start fresh and you start new, and then you start again in this reality. And then we get taught from a very young age what humans are, what it means to be human. We get indoctrinated through our programs, right? So you can see where if you don't have memories of your previous consciousness, because again, energy, it doesn't get created nor destroyed, it just changes form. And I think of like the caterpillar or the butterfly. Everybody talks about that analogy, but it's so true. We literally just change forms. We don't really die. We metamorphosize into another aspect. And this is something else too. I don't have it on the screen, but we do have Uranus conjunct Sedna right now in Gemini. And you can look up the story of Sedna And she was an Inuit goddess who became sea creatures. And there's a story there about her father chopping off her fingers, and and also ties into the patriarch. And so, again, you could go and look this up. Again, it's a deeper wisdom story, because we do have Uranus that's conjunct or right next to that energy of Sedna, that's showing us how, because Uranus also too is the father god. It's the god of the sky. It's the god of electricity. I think of Thor, right? The god of thunder and lightning. That's very much Uranus. And Uranus also was the father of time, Saturn. And time, we understand, if you follow this channel, has to do with structure, has to do with the actual dimensional spaces, the way constructs, they call it the cube, and the dimensional forces of the black cube energy, which has to do with Saturnian energy and that hexagram that's supposedly on the planet of Saturn, if we're still following that NASA timeline, which I'm not. I'm an astrologer who studies astrological things, is willing to say, I don't even know if the way we've been taught astronomy is correct. That's something I'm willing to let go of as well. And this is something I've been studying for 20 something years. But I'm going outside in nature, and I'm actually connecting to the planetary energies themselves, rather than just kind of staying on the screen and looking at it from mind. I'm actually going out in nature, having an experience with the moon, with the sun, seeing when the Venus comes in her rising point, when she's in her evening star phase or morning star phase, right? Because I find that I have different conversations and different awarenesses and different stories that the earth herself is showing me. Not the stories of man, not his story or her story, but there's actually a divine intelligence story that's always speaking if we learn how to listen. And sometimes it's through the use of certain plant medicines and certain herbs and certain tools of nature that helps us to get to these states. Now, again, this is just a story. You guys can take it, however you relate to it. It's just a mythos in play, because I am a storyteller. So everything that is being shared today is for storytelling purposes only. Tune into your own gnosis about these things. But this is the energy that wanted to be transmitted today, especially as we're approaching this deeply transformative time, because we know humanity is under deep metamorphosis. We are in deep transformation on all levels, and especially all eighth house matters, and all, Taurian matters, our value, our money systems. We're really starting to feel that we are kind of done. Uranus with the square, with Pluto and Aquarius, we're done being lied to. We're done not knowing the truth, right? Because we're starting to realize that what you don't know can hurt you. Okay, so this is part of the transmission that wanted to come through. And I also like to use oracle cards, because I feel like they're just a great tool to give an added nuance to the energy of especially during moon cycles, because moon has to do with memory and emotions. So a lot of us can be feeling very, very emotional during this time period, right? Facing the lower level emotions that of the underworld, of all Plutonian things, of the things of Hades, right? Things that maybe even the word hate, right? Hades, things we hate about ourselves, right? The things we don't like about ourselves, right? The lower vibrational frequency energies. And lower is not bad. It's just the underground, is right. If you think of polarity, right? A lot of us still association high with good and low with bad. That's not the case, because the lowest vibrational frequency is the earth vibration, which is the great mama, right? So that's something else you want to tune into, is that it's about energetic low vibrations, not so much the lower vibrations themselves, because that's what houses our ability to ground. Right. So I just wanted to make that distinction, because the language is super potent right now, and how we use the language. And so I want to go ahead and pull a card for the collective. Anybody that's here that's watching this, it's a vibrational match. Again, thank you for spending your most valuable resource, which is your time, to be here, to connect to this channel, to connect to this transmission. So for anybody here that watches, that comes across this video, that comes across these words in this full moon and Scorpio energy, what do you need to know? What right now do you need to know regarding this full moon and Scorpio energy? as a collective, as humanity is navigating deep transformation, deep awareness, things that have been hidden that we need to look at, and what needs to be revealed, what can we know, or what can help serve best humanity for all of us that's watching this particular transmission. What do we need to know? Please, one card. Childlike devotion, number 50. It says, you are multi-talented. You are a multi-talented, complex being. Embrace love in who you are. So this also too has to do with the heart of the child, which is very much Aries. Right now we do have Neptune in Aries, and Saturn. We've got Mars. We've got the stellium here in Aries. We've got Mercury, how we're thinking. It's right next to Chiron on the full moon. So there's some massive healing, inner wound child healing. It's about being in a state of curiosity. It's returning to that. Really, if you go out and watch kids and play, they're not fearful at all. They just go up to each other. Hey, you want to go play on this? You want to do this? They just jump around. They're just in the moment. And so the best way to navigate this particular current, this very dense and emotional time period for this full moon, is to be in your childlike wonder. Go out in nature, go play on the swing, return to that state of natural wonder. And some of us on this planet, I'm hearing, and maybe during this transmission, maybe never had a childhood that wasn't full of trauma and abuse. And so what I'm hearing now is just in your imagination station, imagine you having your own child in you, like you being your own inner child in your own womb space, whether you're a male or female, it doesn't matter, and connect to that protectiveness, that how you would want to protect your own inner child, and the love and the devotion you would give that inner child, which is you, maybe in a brand new way. This is the alchemy of love. This is Scorpio. This is taking pain and metamorphosizing it, composting it, and turning it into and growing a new version of yourself. But you have to connect to that inner child state, which is also, right now we have a Asclepius in Leo, which is the heart of the child. So whatever it means to be a child to you, even if you didn't get to be a child when you were younger, and I'm just sending out so much love for those that I'm feeling that from, that comes across this video, that didn't really get to be a child. I send you love, and just know that inner child is there, even though there's a lot of sediment, even though there's a lot of pain, and if you had to fractal yourself because of all the trauma, you can call yourself back to yourself. And our consciousness is so powerful. We don't realize the power of our word, vibration, how we can call things into ourselves. We can command. This is also Mars, Aries, Mercury, Aries, command in these frequencies. It's not about asking niceties anymore or doing the whole religious thing. Oh, I'm praying for. No, you got to command it in, and it will be so. There's an image, my friend, I think it was Psalms, that she said, be still and know that I am God. And that's what that I am presence is you do have that God force within you. You are part of the divine creator, that divine intelligence that comes through you and resonates deeply within you. And so you just have to access that through play, through curiosity, and through being like the heart of the child. And so I'm going to ask for some more messages now, 2 more messages for the collective who needs to, what you need to know right now, how to navigate this very intense full moon, what's being released. A breakthrough to new dimensions. Okay, this is number 25. The first card was number 50, by the way. We should break it down to a 5. And the second card is 25, and it says breakthrough to new dimensions. A new endeavor is on the horizon. Innovation energy wants to birth force into your consciousness. And so this is a whale. It looks like it's breaching. It's coming out of the ocean, right? So we also know too, innovation energy has to do with Aquarius. And so Pluto right now, we're talking about Scorpio, which is the ruler of Pluto. It is about innovation and technology. But what I'm saying, it's the technology that already resides within you. Because again, we do have this opposition to the sun. The sun is showing that you already have these technologies that they've been replicating outside of us and selling it back to us and saying, hey, look what we can do. We have a tech that can do this for you. when actually they've just been replicating your own internal system the whole time, selling you back to yourself, right? Because you already have these technologies within. So this is remembering, possibly doing some deep meditation at this time, really going inwards, because it is the whale. It's going deep, swimming into the unknown, uncharted waters of your unconscious. So perhaps doing a deep meditation where you're accessing that innate part of you that already knows how to self-generate and to self-heal. And again, this is just a story, right? This is just a metaphysical story of the energy. But this is just a story that humanity perhaps needs to know and remember about itself, that you do have these abilities. And to be in that state of the child of curiosity, to use your imagination, whatever shows up for you, that empowers you, that helps you feel ignited and vibrant and alive. That's the energy you want to cling on to. That's the energy you want to harness. Because again, it's just power. It's how power is wielded, right? So our consciousness is what wields our power. And if we've been in fear and trauma and fractaled out our consciousness, you can see where it's almost like our power's been dispersed, right? How can you start up an energy or a current if you're not getting the full circuitry? So, new innovations are coming through, but I feel like intuitively the new innovations are coming from within you, deep within your consciousness, within the power of your own mind, and the power to be able to heal our bodies with our minds. And again, follow way showers like Dr. Joe Dispenza and even David Wilcox back as 2020, 2012 stuff. He goes really deep into that. And so there's, whoever you're in alignment with, again, that gives you your power back to yourself, that helps you remember that you are a sovereign. That's what I personally am being drawn to right now, are those way showers that put the energy and the power back into myself, right? It's not about external powers anymore. It's about accessing your inner power. And so the third card for the collective energy pool that wants to come through, that wants to be ignited and remembered, and to help us through this full moon illumination in Scorpio, connect to source, number 47. It says, go within to discover what needs to be done, create the shift required to attract what you want. So for those especially that are attracting healing, this is a very powerful card. This is 4 and 7, which is 11, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yes. So again, master number. And we know too that this axis point is going to be at 11 degrees. So there's that 11 coming up, that master number. It's returning to our mastery. It's what it is. It's returning to our inner alchemical mastery that we forgot, but that it's being reactivated, that we're starting to remember exactly how to do this, how to create homeostasis with our own minds, within our own nervous systems, within our own Kundalini life force energy, right? To harness it. It's like riding a current. You can't control it, but you can harness. I'm thinking of the movie Dune, right? Dune 2, when he's learning to control the worm or the snake, right? That's Kundalini. He's riding that snake. He's riding that current. He's connecting with it. He's being brave. He's learning how to harness that energy, right? And that's all we can do, is to harness the energy in a benevolent way that actually serves humanity. And right now, from what I'm seeing in the storyline, is at Dune, the warfare is about consciousness. And that's a great movie too, to talk about the power of plant medicine and animal medicine, because the mother had to ingest poison and learn how to alchemize it, and then have a big consciousness awakening, kind of like the DMT experience, right? Where you go into certain states and then you're able to access certain dimensional frequencies and realms through getting into these certain states of consciousness. So the last card that came through with connect to source is you can connect to that state of consciousness anytime. You have the power. You always have, Dorothy, like the shoes, right? You've always had the power to connect. You just forgot. So it's being able to remember that you are the alchemist. You can heal your mind, your body, your soul, your spirit, your finances, whatever it is that's going on inside of you. This is the story anyway that wants to come through, especially with this Asclepius energy, because it's forcing us to face. It's forcing us to face our shadows. It's forcing us to face the hidden powers that be, that have been commandeering and have been studying and researching. And I would even say experimenting on our energies, right? Just like we experiment on animals, it's as above, so below, as within, so without. So this is connecting to the divine force energy within you. Again, it's just power. It's not to be scared of. Again, be childlike, curiosity with it. Number 50, which is change, the mind, Mercury. Be willing to see things differently. Be willing to break through new dimensions. 7, by going in and doing the work, having some deeply meditative experiences, possibly near water, because it was a whale coming out of the ocean. And then, of course, connect to source, which is connecting to all that is, connecting to that benevolent energy of divine living intelligence that loves all of us, and that we are connected to, and that we do affect one another through our energy, through our current, and through our words, and being responsible for the energy that you bring into any place and environment, but including your own. And be kind to yourself. Words matter. And so this is the transmission that wanted to come through today. Again, anybody that was a vibrational match to being here, thank you for connecting. And if you liked any of this content, you found value, please like, subscribe, share, do all the things to help the channel grow. Because that's what this is. It's about expanding the consciousness to invoke in more love, more unity, more wholeness, right? It's not about, for me, the language, I'm not inviting in peace anymore, because peace is fractal. It's just a piece of the puzzle, right? It's a piece of the pie. No, I want the whole thing. It's the wholeness, inviting in wholeness and balance and harmonic vibration, coherence. That's what I'm inviting in. So just thank you so much for spending your time and energy, and please connect and join the channel for more transmissions, downloads, as we are all learning to navigate these energy currents together, and perhaps speak about these things in a new way, including astrology, right? Being willing to let go of everything we think we know to make room for what we don't know, and to stay curious about it, right? To go deep with it and connect to source, because you know that your source, your own source energy field, and how you know its source is because it makes you feel good. When you connect and go in meditation and you have these aha awarenesses, you come out of it feeling empowered and enlivened and with more vitality, right? So that's how you can discern what energies you're connected with based on how you feel after you connect. It's very simple. Do you feel good? Do you feel great? Do you feel invigorated? Do you feel more robust and more loving and more kind and more connected? Then that's you connecting to source. Anything else is just a draw on your energy and siphoning energy in one way. It's an imbalanced current. So just use your discernment during this time. Allow yourself to feel the feels, because Scorpio is very intense, but it's also revealing and showing you your own personal alchemy that you can access to, but you got to go through that dark tunnel to get to it. There's no bypassing it. You got to go through it. And so I hope that this message, this transmission, is in my effort to help you go through it, to help all of us go through it, because we're not alone. We're not meant to do this life alone. And I'm here with you. We've got this, soul fam. So much love to you. All right, I'll see you in the next transmission. Bye.